Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to walk you through the 1Cademy task management website. Real quick, I'm going to show you how to get there. So that's it, 1cademy.us. If you go there, you'll see this page. This is the home page for the website. What you want to do is go up to account once you're logged in and go to experiment activities. And this will be our task management site where you log different activities and even participate in some. All right, so this is the 1Cademy task management website. Real quick, I'm going to walk you through some just general information that's important here. The first is, once again, across the top, we have all these tabs. These are for different areas of work you'll be working in. Over here, it shows a sort of leaderboard of where you're placed compared to the other researchers in an area. So 1Cademy points, the yellow dots are everyone else, orange dot is me. And it goes for different areas. So 1Cademy points, administrators, and then free recall grading are the ones shown here. Here's listed the point threshold you need to reach to be a co-author. So there's a different number for each one of these things. And it's important to know some of these activities, you need points for two different things. So for like intellectual activities, you need points for doing the activity and then points for voting on other people's activities. You can expand this leaderboard that gives you sort of a more detailed list of your points and everyone else's. It's also color coded. So dark green means that you're currently working on it. Light green means that you worked on it recently. Light red means it's been a little while. Dark red means it's been a long time. So you can look at it and sort of see what your activity's been like and know whether you need to get back on task. Another important thing, so right now we're in the 1Cademy tab. And this tab, it helps us track our activity on the 1Cademy platform. A really important thing is if you're working in this research community on 1Cademy's knowledge graph, make sure knowledge visualization is your tag. That's really important because all our points on here is tracked based on that tag. So if you're in a different community, you won't get points for it. Scoring on here is based on upvotes minus downvotes for the nodes that you've added. So that'll give you a score for what you've added. You also get a score based on your votes. So you receive a point for every 25 upvotes you cast on your colleagues' proposals. So what's important to know here is, one, your score is based on the nodes you add and the content you've put onto 1Cademy's platform. It's also based on you actively voting on your teammates' activities. A second separate important note is when it comes to the voting, it's 25 upvotes per day. So you need to do those 25 upvotes in a single day. If it's spaced over several days or it's less than 25, you won't get a point. You won't get partial points. So that's how the scoring works there. All right, so this is the intellectual activities tab. So on this page, this is where we'll log our activities that aren't covered by these other tabs. So down here, it gives you a list of what it doesn't include. A good example of an intellectual activity is reading a research paper that we're then going to use to write nodes with. That time spent reading the research paper, we log here. So important to note, this is in 30-minute slots. So the way this would work is, let's say we choose a date. We have AM, PM. I just selected hours. Now I'm doing minutes. So this is 1:30 p.m. That means it covers a time slot of 1:30 p.m. to 2 p.m. And then we describe, and it's important to add some detail here when you're describing what you've done, because ultimately our score comes from how other people vote on it. So it's not just add it and you get your score. So a little bit of detail is how people can read it and be like, oh, this is contributing. So we'll add activity down here and it gets added. Down here, you get a full list of everything you've done, shows you the date, the time and date, description, and how many votes it's gotten. So there's two scores related to intellectual activities that are important. So the first one is based on what you've added and people voting for it, which gives you points. The other component of this is your evaluation of others. So up here we have votes on what you've contributed. Here, these are points related to you evaluating others. And how you evaluate others is you come to this portion here, you can see the person, the date and time, and then the description. If you hover, you get a full view of what they've done. And then you upvote, or you can skip vote it. In terms of scoring, you need to do 25 upvotes of your others per day to get one of these check points. And then this down here logs how many per day you're doing. So if I hit one, it'll be one of 25. It's important to know the scoring on your evaluation is that it has to be 25 a day. So what that means is if you do 25 over 2 days, you won't get a point. If you do 24 in 1 day, you won't get a point. You need to do 25 in 1 day. All right, so the next tab is instructors. And what we're doing here is we're adding a database of instructors that we'll use to contact to help recruit people for the experiment. So once again, we have a 2 points we have to worry about. One is voting, one is our contribution. And the way we do this is first we go down to the bottom, and this is where we add instructor information. So there's kind of a lot going on here. The first thing we'll want to do is take care of this sort of block, which is the information about the instructor. So you'll see the website to find the info. What that means is, where are we getting the information from this professor, for this professor? And then from here, we have the prefix. We have a lot of options. Professor and doctor are usually the most common. And it's just important that if in their information, it's listed as doctor or PhD, make sure you use doctor. If you don't see that at all and you can't find evidence that they have a PhD, professor is usually your best bet. We have first name, last name, make sure those are spelled correctly. Email address. Position would be the specific position they have. So if it's a faculty chair of something, list that out. If it's adjunct and professor, add that. Topic of interest is challenging. That's what their area of focus is. And what's related to that is 1Cademy community. This is then finding which community their topic of interest most aligns with. Finally, we have information on the university, so the institution, city, state, country. So going back to the website where you find it, it's important to note that a lot of university websites will have pages like this, and sometimes they'll even give more detail about their professors. We don't want the URL for this page. We want the URL for their specific page. So if I were adding Dr. Anthony Chow, it would be this URL. On here, you can see the information you're typically working with. So research or their focus or interests. Here, you'll usually find listed like this. Sometimes you'll have to read through their bio for that, but generally most of the other information can quickly be found here. You'll see these two at the top we haven't addressed yet. So we also want to know the number of citations that they have for their work. And the way that works is you can generally just search the person on Google Scholar. So in this case, we have Robert Plant, and we can see that they have this many citations. So what we do is take the number of citations and the URL for this page. URL goes here, number of citations here. Once we're done, we'll add instructor. Down here, you can see a full list of everyone you've added and the number of votes it's gotten. So we'll go over the voting system shortly, but basically if you're seeing down votes and comments saying what's wrong, what you can do is select this one. It'll repopulate this area here. You can double check or try to fix what's in the comments. Once you've done that, you update instructor and it'll change it. So in order to do that, there's this field, this area of the page right here. And this is where you evaluate where your teammates have been adding stuff. So here we have all those fields we saw below listed out. And then you'd use this website, the URL they provide, to double check the information. And then you can upvote or downvote, or you can just click on it and use this. It'll populate up here. Upvote, downvote it. If you downvote it, you really should leave a comment why you're downvoting it so they can change it and improve it. And so the scoring on here works is upvotes versus downvotes is the top score. And then your voting score is you get 1 point for doing 16 per day. So that means, once again, you have to do 16 in one day. If it's 16 over several days, it doesn't count. If it's less than 16 in a day, it doesn't count. And if it goes over 16, if you do 32 in a day, you don't get 2 points. You can only get 1 point a day. The next one is administrators, and this is basically the same thing. So in this case, rather than professors, we're looking at administrators. There's no citations. We're just doing the website where you get the information. How to address would be their name, email address, position, and then information about the institution. Once again, anything you've added will be populated down here. You can check up and down votes and comments. And then this doesn't have anything, but it would be filled out much the same way the instructors page is. So you'd go through and see the information others have added and then evaluate it. The voting system works the same way. So upvotes versus downvotes for what you've added, and then 1 point per 16 evaluations a day. All right, so this is the free recall grading portion, this tab right here. And what we're doing here is grading subjects' free recall responses from the experiment. There's 3 portions on this page. We have the actual response from the participant. We have all potential key phrases that could be in that response. And then we have the original passage that they were reading when they gave this response. In general, what we're doing here is we're reading what the subject responded, and then checking no, yes, whether this key phrase is represented or stated in some way up above. So we'll want to go through all of these and hit yes or no, and then submit. An important feature, though, is these key phrases don't represent every single key phrase that our researchers pulled out of this passage. There's a system using Boolean expressions to represent each phrase that automatically goes through a response and decides whether a key phrase is potentially represented or not. So I'm going to show you a little more on how that works and an added page that can happen as a result. So in real life, you're going to want to evaluate every single one of these. I'm hitting yes on every single one because it's going to trigger us to go to another page. So in order to ensure the quality of the system, the Boolean expressions are for each key phrase is meant to give you a shorter list. So it can determine it helps us determine what key phrase could potentially come up. But in order to check the quality, we also add in some phrases that the Boolean expressions didn't identify. So for you as a researcher, just hitting yes every single time will not get you points. But more realistically, if you are taking your time and evaluating this correctly, you still might go to this page. So if you choose one that the system didn't think was actually represented in the response, you will be taken to this page. And this page is a little complicated, but basically what it's doing is showing you, this is the response that the subject gave. It's now showing you the key phrase you chose that it didn't think should be in there. And then it's giving you an opportunity to write a new Boolean expression to represent that phrase. So to help you understand what's going on, her mother was inconsistent but effective. the Boolean expression used for that, none of the words in here triggered that. So the system's saying, why do you think this is represented in here? One option is we can just hit no, and that's more or less skip. That means we changed our answer. The other is to write a new Boolean expression. In this case, the keyword mother was used for the expression, and we might say that's inadequate because this phrase should be represented by what's in here, but it isn't. And what we do then is we can write a new Boolean expression. So in this case, let's just say I said the one keyword mother is not adequate. So I'm going to do mother, add keyword. We can do alternatives. These are synonyms. So it shows you up here the synonyms for mother. So ma, you put it in, enter mom. I'm not going to do all these, but you could put all these. But I could also add another keyword. So let's say effective, I think, is a good keyword. And then you would add the synonyms. And you would want to take some time to consider all the potential synonyms. And then, so once I've done that, I could submit. And what that would do now is for this key phrase, which was an issue and how I responded, we would have two proposals for how that's represented, and you can then vote on them. So in this case, it's just represented by the keyword mother. My proposal would be mother and effective with their synonyms. And other people in this scenario then could upvote or downvote, and we could essentially change how a key phrase is represented by a Boolean expression. All right, so the way scoring works for you as a researcher on this is that for every response that you grade, if there's a consensus between you and at least two other researchers, then you and those other researchers that agree get half a point. And that's for each one of these. However, if 3 researchers disagree with you, then you lose half a point. So it's important to know that you have positive and negative point potential on this. So for example, on the top, you have your net number of points. So that's positive minus the negative. And then here it's explicitly showing how many negative points you've gotten. That system is there to encourage you to be thoughtful about how you grade these. It's also important that to know that the 4 researchers grading it, that's how we essentially protect the reliability of our grading. So if 3 researchers agree on how they rate this, then they, like, let's say all 3 say yes, then the subject will get a point for that. If all 3 said no, they wouldn't. So how you and the 3 other researchers work affects the grade of the subject, obviously, because we're grading it, but it also affects how many points you get. So basically, it's just important to be thoughtful and make sure you're trying to answer these as accurately as possible. All right, so the final tab here is coding participant feedback. What they're doing is offering feedback on either condition, and we're using grounded theory here. And what we're essentially doing is we have a thematic code book that has all the general themes for a type of response. And then here on the left, we have the participant response broken into sentences. And what we do is essentially click here for the first sentence, and we go through the code book and select all the codes that apply to it. So this is just an example. Let's say this sentence addresses that one of the conditions was quicker to read. We would click that, and then we'd choose H2 or K2. Now it's important to note, this isn't choosing which one is directly addressed. It's which one a preference is stated for. And what that could mean is this could say it was quicker to read H2, in which case we would select this and then it's selected H2. They could also say K2 took longer to read, which would be, once again, less time to read the passage in favor of H2, even though they directly said K2. So really important on these clickers, it's stated preference, not what was mentioned. So once again, for this sentence, we'd go through, select all the codes. When we're done, we move on to the next sentence, make sure you select that one, and then choose all codes that apply, and then which the preference is for, H2 or K2. Another feature here is that we can save a quote. So if they have a really succinct or great way of stating one of these themes, we would hit save a quote. And that'll help us when we write a research paper, have some material to quote from participant feedback. Oh, the last thing here we need to do is, let's say one of these passages or one of these sentences says something that's not represented in the code book, but we think it is a good thematic reason why somebody would have a preference for one of the two conditions. Now, it's important to note, if they're saying something that's not represented in the codes, or if it's not represented in the codes, that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a code. Sometimes they can just put nonsense. What we're looking for is this sort of idea or theme not represented in the code book that they found affected their preference and would likely affect other people's preferences. In that case, we would add the code here, create, and that code then gets added for people to use in their evaluation. Once we're done, we hit submit. Scoring on this is very similar to free recall grading. Basically, 4 researchers looking at the same response. For each one of these codes, if you agree with at least 2 of them, all of them get half a point. If you disagree with 3 of them, you lose half a point. So up here we have net score on top, positive minus the negative. And down here, it's explicitly showing how many negative points you've gotten from being or disagreeing with the other people coding responses. Finally, we have all your coded responses down here. It's important to note, you can actually revise these. So let's say new codes get added and you're like, oh, there were some that actually had that, but I wasn't able to evaluate it. You could then select one, it pops up here, and you can change how you voted. And once you're done, submit. This page is the 1Cademy experiment page. It's this tab right here. We have the usual leaderboard. The important thing here, this is where we schedule our meetings. So what you'll want to do is select times that correspond with days that you can work, and then we hit submit. And that's how you say, I'm available at these times for meetings. The way this works is participants that are then signing up for meetings will see these days among the other availability of all our other researchers for times they can choose to do their experiment. So we have a calendar of experiments that you've run, a list here about those. It's important to know that scoring for these are 16 points for the first experiment that you run. That's because the first experiment is longer. The follow-ups are shorter, and those get you 7 points. The experiment session page is also where you run experiments. The way that works is when you have a scheduled experiment, you can remind a participant. You can also choose to start the session once they're there. And then the experiment itself is run through Google Meets. And then you also mark them as attending the meeting once they've joined. And this is where you can actually start running the experiment. From the experiment page, we can also go and grade their free recall responses as they do those. We can also switch over to the coding feedback page and do that as well. Finally, it is recommended that you get ChatGPT as well as the 1Cademy Assistant Helper extension. These work together. ChatGPT can be found just by searching it on Google. So we'll go here, it's by OpenAI, try ChatGPT. This is where you'll go to sign up for it. So you'll want to sign up. And once you have an account there, you can use the 1Cademy Assistant Helper. Finally, you'll want to add the 1Cademy Assistant extension. And you can do that from here. This is the Chrome Web Store. In order to get here, you can just search on Google Chrome extensions. And once you're on here, you'll just search 1Cademy. And then this is the assistant right here. It's important to note you'll need to be in a Chrome browser because this is a Chrome extension. But you'll click on this and then you'll add to Chrome. And then you'll have it up here in your extensions. And that'll give you a tool that is very useful with your research.